Triangles are very, very interesting polygons. As a matter of fact, if you look at you guys' houses, you will see triangles a lot. As a matter of fact, look at the roof. Look at the roof and you guys see triangles. Ask a construction person, why do they use triangles? They will tell you that is the strongest polygon there is. So they use the idea of triangles sometimes to find the beams in the house and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. But here for today, we're going to be looking at what we call triangle angle sum. Okay, so let me break this thing down. Triangle, we know the shape of a triangle. Angle, okay, angle is a corner, and sum is basically adding. So triangle angle sum, we're basically going to be adding the angles of a triangle. Before I look at the work, our homework, let's say something really cool. Something really cool with triangles. Let me draw a triangle. I highly encourage, try this at home. Try this at home. So in your case, don't draw a triangle. In your case, cut a triangle. It doesn't matter how big are each of the corners. So don't worry about measuring the corners. Just cut a triangle. So grab a piece of paper and just cut any triangle. Now, I'm going to focus on the angles. So in my case, I have these angles, right? In your case, if you're following this along, like I said, cut a triangle on your corner, colored. So paint, do mark the corners. Again, I'm just focused on the angles. And then let me mark with red. You guys will come over and cut it out. Right? It is a piece of paper, so you guys can cut those pieces. So you guys will have three corners. Right? If I look at these, you will have a corner like this, right? Because I just have the corner. You have another corner here. And then you have another corner here. Like I said, you cut out the three corners because they're a piece of paper, so you guys can cut them out. And then try to put the corners together. So you will come over, line one of my corners. So it will look like that. Grab a second corner. So second angle, it will look something like this. And then grab the third angle, it will look something like this. Now this happens every single time. So that's why I even tell you, try it at home. You guys don't believe me? Try it at home. Grab a triangle, just cut any triangle, cut the three corners out of each triangle, and then put the corners together. So at the end, you should be looking at something marked like this. Just remember how each of my corners were marked? You should be looking at this. Now, one thing that is very, very interesting, doesn't that shading look like half of a circle? I know circle's 360 degrees. So half of 360, right? Half of a circle, shouldn't that be 180? And it is. It is. Interesting is that the three angles of any triangle always add up to 180. Again, you guys don't believe me? Try it at home. Pause the video, cut your triangle, cut the corners, put them together, and you guys will see that it does create an angle of 180 degrees. So again, the three angles of a triangle will always add up to 180. All right, let me erase this really quick. Now let's take a look at question number 1. The instructions for 1 and 2, it says solve for x. Okay, so I know x is part of an angle, right? This angle is x plus 57. I know another angle is 80, and I know a third angle is 50. Now I know that if I add the three angles, it should equal to 180. So let me do that. Let me add my three angles. So let me just go x plus 57 plus 50 plus 80. So notice I'm adding all my angles. So x plus 57 plus 50 plus 80. And this has to equal to 180. Right? We just said that the three angles of a triangle always add up to 180. Now this just looks like a simple algebra question. I have to solve for x. I remember in algebra, I will separate my sides through the equal sign. So let me just draw my line through the equal sign. Now the left side, there's a bunch of things, right? There's three numbers in a letter. Let me combine my like terms. So when it comes to letters, there's only one term that has a letter, so just x. When it comes to numbers, I have 57 plus 50 plus 80. Now I'm just going to add them all, and this gives me 187. So I have x plus 187. It is equal to 180. All I did on the left was combine like terms. Okay. Now when I have x by itself, I'm going to move. I want to have x by itself. I do want to cancel this plus 187. I do want to cancel it. Now, I'm not a magician that I make things disappear. Instead, I move it from one side of the equal sign to the other. Don't forget to switch the sign. So on the other side, I'm going to write it as minus 187. Right? Instead of plus, I write it as a minus. Don't forget to switch the sign. Okay, so now on the left side, I have x by itself equals 180 minus 187 will give me a negative 7. It is okay for x to be negative. Sometimes my value of x will be negative. Sometimes it will be positive. It is fine for x to be negative. So negative 7 seems about correct. Nice. Let's take a look at question number 2. Some of you might be like, hey, Mr. Leonzo, you said I have to have 3 angles, but I only see 2 there. What is the third one? Well, the third one, we represented as a little red box. Every time you see that red box, I don't quite see numbers there, but every time we see a red box that represents 90 degrees. So it is given, right? There's 3 angles. So I know that I have to add the 3 angles. So I'm just going to go 46 plus 90. Don't forget that 90 plus x plus 53 equals. Remember, I'm adding all of my angles, and this is equal to 180. Remember that 3 angles of a triangle always add up to 180. And don't forget the red box, it's 90. Don't forget the 90. Okay, so let me separate my sides to the equal sign. Again, there's a bunch of things on the left side. So let me combine my like terms. When it comes to letters, I only have one x. So there. Now on the numbers, 46 plus 90 plus 53, that's 189. So let me write this as plus 189, and this is equal to 180. Again, I just combine my like terms. To get x by itself, I remember in algebra, sometimes we use the word isolate x. That's the fancy way of saying get x by itself. So I want to get rid of this plus 189. But again, I'm not a magician. I'm just a mathematician. So this plus 189, I move it to the other side as a minus 189. Don't forget to switch the sign. So I have that x is equal to 180 minus 189. Use a calculator if you need to, will give me a negative 9. Again, I have another negative number. Sometimes my answer will be positive, sometimes it will be negative. It is okay for x to be negative. Now, if I had a number other than 1, technically I have a 1 in front of x because I have 1x, right? There's only 1x. So technically there's an imaginary 1 in front of it. There, I got the value of x. But if there was something else in front of x, divide both sides by that number. So let's say I had a 3 in front of x. Instead of 1x, I had 3x. Then divide both sides by 3. I'm always going to divide both sides by the number in front of x. Technically, it's a 1. Dividing by 1 does nothing, so I'm done, right? Pretty simple. The first two questions were not that bad. Let's take a look at question number 3 and 4. Find the measure of each angle indicated. Okay, now here I'm asking for an angle. Angles are positive. I know in questions 1 and 2, x was negative, but x was just part of an angle. Going back to question number 1, x was a -7. If you replace x with a -7, -7 plus 57 gives you a positive value. So the angle is positive. Same thing with number 2. X was part of an angle. If instead of x you use -9, -9 plus 53, it does give you a positive value. So when I'm asking for angles, in this case, questions number 3 and 4, I do expect a positive value. If I get a negative value, more than likely I did something wrong. Now do me a favor. Don't just change the sign. I've heard of students before like, oh, I got a negative. I'm supposed to have a positive. Let me just switch the sign. Now it's positive. Well, let me tell you this. If you got a negative, more than likely you have a wrong answer. Just changing the sign of a wrong answer, it is still a wrong answer. So no, don't just change the sign. Instead, look back at your work. Okay, now on your homework, on these questions, if you notice there are 2 triangles in there. Don't start on the triangle where the question mark is. I'm basically solving for this angle, right? There's a question mark there. I'm solving for that angle. Do not start on the triangle that has that corner. Instead, start on the other triangle. So my focus right now is this triangle. That's where I'm going to start. Do not start on the triangle that has the angle you're looking for. Now, on a triangle, I know that 3 angles have to add up to 180. The triangle that I see, I only have 2 angles, 35 and 15. What I'm going to do first, let me add those 2 angles. 35 plus 15, if I add them, is 50. Okay, now that I have 2 angles of a triangle, I should be able to figure the third angle. What I'm going to do with my 50, let me subtract it from 180. Now 180 minus 50 is 130. Now this 130, I know is this corner. When you have a triangle and you have 2 angles, just add them up, subtract it from 180, and then you should know how big is your third angle, right? If you add those 3 numbers, 15 plus 35 plus 130 is 180, right? We have the rule that says the 3 angles of a triangle have to add up to 180. Okay, so I'm not looking at this triangle anymore. I remember the vertical angle theorem. We used that theorem before. I remember that theorem said that when there's an X formed, opposite angles are equal. Now, I see there's an X form right there. So I know based on the vertical angle theorem, I know when there's an X, angles that are opposite are equal to each other, right? Opposite in geometry means on the other side. So I'm gonna say this corner up here is 130 based on the vertical angle theorem. Okay, so I'm not gonna focus on that anymore. Let me take a look at this triangle. I think I'm ready to find the angle that I was asked for. I know that triangle, the one I highlighted in yellow, I see 2 angles given, 27 and 130. So let me add those 2 angles up, and I'm gonna have 157. Right, I added those 2 angles, 27 plus 130. Let me subtract this from 180. So from 180, so I'm gonna go 180 minus 157, that gives me 23. And that's this angle. Cool. So my answer should be 23. Again, do not start from the triangle that has the angle that you're looking for. Because in order for you to start from a triangle, you need to know at least two angles. So let's take a look at question number 4. I'm going to start looking at this triangle. I'm going to add those two angles. I have 65 plus 25. I know that's 90. So those two angles combined is 90. Let me subtract that from 180. Now 180 minus 90 is 90. So I know this angle here is 90. Let me not look at that triangle anymore. Based on the vertical angle theorem. Remember, when there's an X form, opposite angles are equal. So based on the vertical angle theorem, I'm going to say this angle right here is also 90. Now, let me focus on this triangle. I know two angles. I know two angles of that triangle, right? 90 and 33. If I was to add 90 plus 33, that's 123. Let me subtract that from 180. Now 180 minus 123 is 57. I'm going to say this quarter right here is 57. Notice I don't start from the triangle given. Now in your homework, sometimes we don't have the vertical angle theorem. Okay, so sometimes you might see a triangle here and then a triangle right next to it. Now guess what? Something pretty cool in these triangles. These three angles here, those three angles add up to 180. So you guys are going to deal with those cases in your homework sometimes. We don't have the vertical angle theorem all the time. Sometimes we have two triangles next to each other. Now, those three angles, you notice how I highlighted with red, those three angles add up to 180. Okay. You guys should be ready for this assignment.